press record, and then you never know, there might be bits of this that are useful for social media. So welcome along, first of all. So the topic for today is osteoporosis, from bone density to reducing the risks of falling. And one of the reasons why I decided to do another talk on this topic was because a couple of weeks ago I was at a convention and there were a lot of industry leaders there. And we all, I hope, share the passion of wanting to get people moving because there's just so much benefit that comes out of moving. Incidentally, not quite the benefits that the industry may have tried to sell itself on, years of toxic weight loss and things like that. Fortunately, we've now got GLP-1s and we can stop lying and we can get on with what we're actually really good at, which is helping people move, reducing the risks of heart disease, making sure that inevitably we will age and our bone density will change, but through movement we have the best way of keeping it as strong as possible. So I'm really passionate about getting people moving, and three speakers got on. First one was talking biohacking, and I kind of like to say biobollocks because a lot of it was biobollocks. The amount of research that actually supported what they were saying was minimal. And when I did a deep dive into some of the products and methods they were selling, they did have one element of truth, and that was, well, not truth, but they were as good as placebo. So if I put some coloured water into your bath and you believed that that was going to help your performance, it would by 13%. And then there was a talk on osteoporosis and how we've developed new ways of being able to assess your bone density. And that's really interesting. So the gold standard has always been the DEXA scan, and that enables you to have an idea of how your bones are changing. This new scan, what it does is it actually gives a more in-depth description of your porous bone, because you can have bone density drop, uh, but if the bone density that you have is actually of a stronger formation, that can be good. Well, this is what they were saying. And it's like, oh, wow, this is super interesting. And would you believe it? They're selling the scanning, a piece of equipment, which is obviously very, very pricey and private. And guess what? It's also attached to its very own plan, system, and method that they were trying to sell to Leisure DB. And so this was associated with vibration. And some people might know it as osteovibration. There are different formats. So I thought, oh, well, I better go on a deep dive then. And I better have a look at, is there any evidence in this that holds up more than placebo? Okay. I don't know who CB is. If you are in a position to put your cameras on, that would be amazing because it's just really, really,
Kate,
it's really lovely to me. Hello,
um,
Kate, KB. Okay, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put on. Nice to meet you, Kate. How you doing?
good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Uh, so we've just started, so I've just had a little bit of a talk about why I decided to do this talk and where my passion lies. The big thing I want to know now is there any physios, uh, doctors, we've got osteopath, chiropractors in the house today? If you are, just give me a hello. Anybody who's into movement, Pilates, yoga, da 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 da. We've got one hand up there. Okay, just in case you thought this was Alcoholics Anonymous on a Friday afternoon, and it's just definitely the wrong group. Okay, the reason I say that is because I'm not a doctor, so this isn't going to be about the medical side of osteoporosis. I've touched a little bit on how we diagnose it, because we would need to know that if we're working with a client. But I want to stress that everything that we're going to be talking about is within our scope of practice, which comes back down to what's their compelling reason to move and how can we help them move more. Make sure that we don't make anything worse is kind of the big feel there. So if you've got any questions, do pop them in the chat box. And what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to share my screen and and this is where I get that, and it will just take me a couple of minutes to push it around the screen. So if you do have any questions, you can pop them in the chat box. And we shall get through this in about 40 minutes. And I might stop it halfway through as well to see if you've got any questions. There we goes to there. Right, okay. And then I just need to that's supposed to be this. Oh, there we go. That will do me. That will do me nicely. If I can see that, and then I just need to get into. Could I just get somebody who's on, who's got their microphone on, to tell me if you can see my slides flying in front of you with nothing else but just slides flying?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing, because that's always the bit that I never quite know. Okay, so osteoporosis from bone density to fall, reduction through gameplay. So that's the one I've dropped in there, gameplay. So we're going to have a look at what that is. And I started off by saying that my passion is movement. So it's about getting you moving. So the very first thing is if you are someone that likes getting someone moving, then this is really useful because in order for anybody to move, they need a compelling reason to move. And normally, where that comes from is while you're sitting there, and while I'm sitting here in my own little room on my own, now looking at my slides, I still got information. My dog's at my feet. And if she does like a whiz pop, I'm going to smell it. I'm going to have that information. I've got the lights, the sun, I've got the information of the heat, the light in the room. And all of this information is going on the whole time in our lives. Okay. And then when it becomes important enough, this information becomes important enough, it will cross a threshold, a little bit like if you pour your cup of tea in a cup and it suddenly overflows. And at that point, we call it a trigger. That trigger is an emotional chemical reaction. And we kind of go, what? And with that split second, we will get this muscle change, this hormone change, and we call this an emotion. And it emotes us to move. But before we do actually move with this emotion, we've got to kind of make sense out of it. And so, what happens within about 6 seconds, it will go to your brain and it will assess things very, very quickly in what can only be described as kind of chat GPT type model. In that anything you've given it in the past, any information of the past, it will start whipping through patterns that it recognizes at pace. And so it will use patterns like what's happened to you in the past, things that you've been told, things that doctors have told you, friends have told you, past experiences. And with that, within about 6 seconds, you'll take an action. And that action will emote you to move. And it will either move you towards an opportunity, a tasty piece of cake, or something fun, or it's going to move you to freeze, fright, and flight and get out of there. So it's going to perceive that something is a danger. And so it's that opportunity or that danger. And the action that you take from the brain, from those past experiences, will form that action, that feeling. And the feeling that you get, the more time it's repeated, you'll need less information. So less doggies doing whiz pops. I'll kind of smell it, hear it, and I go, oh, straight away because I won't need all of those sensors. So these feelings are reinforced and the feelings come together and they're all at my little smiley faces at the bottom of that screen because those feelings create ultimately an experience. And the amazing thing is that for anybody that comes through the motor skill application specialist course with me, we delve into the part that we really get to be able to be creative with as trainers. And that is we get to play a part in what the brain will perceive as an opportunity or a threat. And if we can make sure that we give our clients the opportunity to reassess what they might in the past think, oh my gosh, that's a big fat hairy spider, that's a danger. And we can go, well, actually, I've got your hand. I'm here with you. I think you'll find that's Henry and he's lovely and he's not going to move out because he's more scared of you. We can help them reassess this feeling and therefore then change their experiences. And all of this is really important because we need our clients to have a compelling reason to move and we need to create experiences that they want to come back for. So as a kid, we start off having that compelling reason to get to a parent, a loved one, and they're calling us, and we'll go, right, okay. We probably don't say, right, okay. We just wobble and we start off and we fall, we wobble, and it's not a problem. We get back up again. But the excitement to get to our parent is just so enthralling that we're gonna fall, we're gonna get back up, and we're gonna keep going. But as we do that, we're actually developing our motor learning skills. So we're learning to be able to put that desire of movement in a way that can actually do something. So we're going to get those muscle contractions at the right time, in the right sequence, with the right amount of power. So we don't want to have too much power because if I had too much in my power in my hand and I'm drinking a cup of coffee, I would just hit my head, and we don't want to do that. So that starts to build up this motor skill, this coordination. And that's really, really important. And the girls at the moment are getting better and better at football and rugby, and it's just an absolute blessing to see. Now, what's this got to do with osteoporosis? Well, as we're kids, we fall and we get back up again. And then as we start to get older, between 20 and 30, our bone density becomes its peak, if you like. And you've got your osteoblasts and your osteoclasts. And what they do is the blasts build it up and the clasts pull it back down again. And all the time, this is pulling your scaffolding into place. And by the age of 30, it's at that peak place. And then what happens is we introduce osteoporosis. And let's just say, when we talk about experience and things that we've heard and how our brain might interpret the word osteoporosis, there is a lot of fear built around osteoporosis. I think before the age of 25, I had heard the silent killer, like some sort of, kind of nightmare film. So we have this absolute fear of it. It's worth mentioning that the way that we diagnose it is by going, well, what are your scores? What's the state of your porous bone compared to that of someone who's in their peak? So anything past the age of 30, your bone density is going to be changing. And it's a bit like everything in life, balancing, outweighing the risks. And things will change and things will evolve. So this made me think, okay, so I want to look into this because it sounds pretty horrible. Um, but it turns out that, as we mentioned, your bone mineral density peaks at around 20 and 30. But then we have a sharp loss as females, and that's due to the climacteric period. So perimenopause, menopause, and postmenopause. But specifically, after you've had your last period, the 5 years after that, due to the plummeting of estrogen. And so, if you go into a very early menopause, this might be where you want to have a conversation with a doctor about HRT, because there are some strong suggestions that this can help with bone density. But thankfully, that's out of my scope of practice. So you would need to go to your doctor about that and see whether the balance of risk outweighs, because obviously there are risks on either side. But then what I also discovered was that it's not just a female thing. Although women do peak with osteoporosis in that period as they lose estrogen, the diagnosis gap comes into the fact because more women fall. And that was super interesting to me. So I thought I'm going to actually have to have a little look at that. And what I discovered is that actually, when men do start to get older, they do start to fall more from the age of 60, 70. And so what's happened is we've had a discrepancy of those people that have been tested.
Joe,
May
you're breaking up quite a bit. I don't know if you know that.
I didn't know that. I'm not. Has everybody heard me so far, or do I need to rewind? Or is that you, Karen?
Just that bit. I don't think it is me. I don't know. No one else is responding, so I don't know.
Okay,
No,
it
it's also breaking up for me a bit too.
okay.
Yeah, it's breaking up for me as well.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
I thought it was
breaking up.
me, but,
Yeah.
but
Okay. Right. Well, I'll try and kind of get through a little bit and go back over. So the crux of it is, so far, women are prone to falling more often, and then if they fall, they're more likely to get scanned and diagnosed. Whereas men don't tend to fall quite as much. And it's only later on that they might get diagnosed. So there's some discrepancies there. What I discovered after being diagnosed, what you could often get is an increased fear of moving. And everything that I looked at, the advice for osteoporosis has not changed in 30 years. There's been nothing that's changed it in 30 years. The best things that you can do for your bones, get lucky with your genetics, don't smoke. If you do, cut down and eat loads of broccoli, but I can't guarantee the broccoli. But don't smoke, move more, and eat more plant-based food. Those are the three things that are still by far an alcohol. So making sure that you've got a healthy diet, you're moving more, are the best things you can do for your bone density. The interesting thing about women is they start to fall more, and this may be more to do their activity levels, their opportunities to do more sport when they're young, developing their motor learning skills. So that key part when we're looking at those girls doing football. So it's going to be interesting to see whether any of this research starts to change. The vast majority of our age-related rise in hip fracture risk appears to have nothing to do with measured bone density. And this is really, really interesting. So 95% of bones do not break without a fall. Even fragile bones do not break without a fall. And that is so powerful because the industry makes a lot of money out of fear. The industries make a lot of money out of diagnosing. And while they might have a place, because if you're the sort of person that if you find out, oh, I've got osteoporosis, you go, right, I'm going to throw away those cigarettes and I'm going to make sure I eat more plant-based. You're going to do everything that you can and change. That's going to be fantastic. If you're someone that's going to ignore it, or worse still, get a trainer that's going to start holding your hand like this and make you feel more fragile, then you could be at risk of not doing the very thing you need to do, and that is get active and move more. Over 30% of over 60s fall every year. But the interesting part, 40% of those falls are from balance related issues. 14 million deaths, 1 in 4 in the US. And these could have been prevented. Now, obviously, with falls, you do also get, somebody who is doing parkour on the top of a house, decorating. There are different falls that are going to happen. But when we're looking at bone density, what we're really looking at is what we call low energy falls. So falls from a low height. So we're not really talking about necessarily those big climbing walls and that type of thing. Karen, who's here with us today, loss of bone density is responsible for 15% of fractures from low trauma falls age 60 to 80%. As we get to 60, what happens is our bone density will continue to decrease, so twofold. And that risk is actually increases by falling by 13-fold. So everything that I'm reading is telling me, get good at moving, get good at moving. And I'm sure Karen won't mind me sharing that she had an early diagnosis. And when she came to me, she was experiencing a lot of pain. So I went into the research on that using the faster process. And that's when I discovered she didn't actually have to be experiencing any pain. And I thought, okay, so how can we make sure that we reduce risks of falls? So I need to know why people fall. So the first thing is you get unlucky. In a gym, the biggest injury risks are still falling over weights. So put your weights away. On that note, my husband did say to me the other day, are you trying to create an obstacle course in our house so that we become so skillful? Because I seem to have a dumbbell or a kettlebell almost everywhere scattered around. So move those types of things. Or it could be, if you've got someone elderly that you look after, make sure that they haven't got any carpets that are lifting up or any rugs that aren't safe, that type of thing. Also, check their hearing so that they're not feeling unbalanced with their hearing or their eyesight. Make sure that they've got good lighting. Those simple things, or slippery surfaces, can really help reduce the unlucky department. The other thing that increases your risk of falling, like getting an injury, is a previous injury or a previous fall. The big reason why a previous fall can be an indicator of another fall is because when you fall, it's scary. And what can happen is we can become high investors. And what that means is, I don't know about anybody else, but I was dreadful when it came to sport. I'd be really excited about my turn to play rounders. But then when it was my turn and I had the bat, I felt so much pressure that I was really overthinking everything. And of course, I would miss the ball. And that's very common in our athletes, but it's also really common in our aging population, that they become such high investors in their movement that they're more likely to make errors, misjudging the height of steps, misjudging their step, not picking up their feet. And that is going to play a big role when we come to using motor skill application and creating games that our clients can use to actually build opportunities where they can learn unconsciously, where they can self-organize. And there's a lot of studies to say that once you start to self-organize, you're less likely to choke as an athlete and you're less likely to fall, which is kind of cool. Also, sorry, this was not going to be in there, but I just remembered there was a study that I read that as you age, the part of your brain that's responsible for cognition and memory starts to change, and we find it harder to learn and remember when you're consciously trying to do something. Whereas if you're unconsciously solving a problem, the learning comes from a different area in the brain, and that learning capability doesn't change as we age, which is fantastic. So another win-win-win for creating games and unconscious solutions. And that's the biggie. How do we get skillful? So how do we create games that will build confidence, that will take away fear, and will give our clients the best opportunity possible? Because things do help, do crop up. It doesn't mean that this is full proof, pardon the pun. What I use is the faster process, and if there are any trainers that have not done this, you can message me afterwards and find out more. But the first thing is, are you the right person to help? If somebody's going through menopause but they haven't been diagnosed, you refer out. Okay, referring out is your friend. Make sure that you're teaming up with physiotherapists, doctors, osteopaths, so that you can refer out when it's out of your scope of practice. And then work with them by going through the research and being the performance coach. Okay, so creating the opportunities to get your client good at moving. That's when we would go into our measurements, starting to build our program. But what's relevant for today is the biomechanics and the skill. So the exercises that you choose, the biomechanics should match the sequencing of the skills that you want your clients to be good at. They need to look like the thing that they actually need to do. And then we need to make sure that they match the energy systems and that they can perform them to the best of their ability. And that's where the art of creating a game to help your client move is going to be really, really important, and goes beyond, okay, so now we're going to play TIG, or we're just going to play, stuck in the mud. We can make sure it actually has a purpose. And then I thought, well, I also need to have a look at what is the research around the different types of movement that we need. We only have to look at Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and we see a load of fallacies. We see a false dichotomy. Women, you should be doing strength training. And then there doesn't seem to be anything else. And I'm all for strength training. One, because it makes me feel like an absolute badass. It's cool. And yes, there are links to that strengthening our bones. It's fabulous, but it doesn't have to mean that you look like a power lifter or an Olympic lifter. It could be that you lift your body weight, or you allow yourself to lean into a wall and just catch yourself. There's loads of different ways of feeling strong and strength training. And it isn't the one or the other. So nothing has changed when it comes to our WHO, the World Health Organization, or the NHS and national guidelines. 2-3 times a week strength training, and making sure that we're getting 150 minutes of moderate exercise, or 75 minutes of a higher intensity. Those things are super important, not just for bone health, but for maintaining our motor skills, for reducing the risks of sarcopenia. So every year past the age of 30, 0.7% of our muscle mass will drop, but we can combat those things through cardiovascular training, through strength training. So it's not either or, it's both of those things. Some things do appear to be better for bone density. So it's great walking for your mental health, and there is a little bit potentially help for your bones. But as soon as you add a bit of brisk walking and maybe some stomping of those legs, that type of thing, then you're going to get a better density change through the spine, through the wrist, and importantly, through the hip. And it's the hip that is really the one that we want to protect, if anything, because as we age with a hip fracture, 50% of people never regain their independence within 12 months. So it's quite a big thing. Then I came across this little study, and it was on bone density, particularly for your hip. And what you had to do, it was done on women, hop 50 times a day. I know that seems quite a lot. And you couldn't sneak a day off. It was 7 days a week, 50 hops on each leg, and they saw changes in the hip. It didn't work if you did 4 days unless you wore a weighted vest. So if 7 days seems way too much, wear a weighted vest, do it for 4 days. So I thought, oh, this is really, really exciting. But as with all research, you need to make sure that you're reading the balance of quality research. Because when I looked a little bit deeper into it, it was done on women 40 minus 10 years and plus 10 years. So not the age group of 60 plus. So before you start making your clients start hopping for 50 times, don't. This might be a nice thing to do if you're younger to get that in the bank. That would be great fun, but not something to give if somebody's already got osteoporosis necessary or in their 70s. So get strong, get good at coordination. So the middle one is my pickleball, fantastic because it shows building community, getting out, seeing other people. That's all really, really good for self-efficacy, but so good for your coordination. And then the other thing that caught my eye was Tai Chi. So we'll get to that. But all of this comes down to what we started off with. What are your reasons to move? And if you feel like something is a threat or a danger, you're not going to want to move. So as trainers, what we get to do, which is flipping amazing, is we get to create exciting, compelling reasons to move. And in order to do that, we haven't got time to go into that. We've got to get to know our clients really well, what they love, what they hate, what they love to hate, what they love to overcome, what challenges them, what excites them, what makes them feel strong, whether that's doing press ups, climbing a tree, or for my mum, it's being able to garden and be in a position where that she can water her plants for hours. So we need to start to think about how can we develop motor skills or games and that are successful, that someone can know what success looks like. So they've got a clear idea of, oh, you need to pick up the watering can, and I then want you to water the bedding plants that I've placed around your mat. This is something I did with my mum. So she would know what success was like. If the water went into the plant pot, it was successful. She had a target, the plant pot, and I was able to adapt it. I was able to change the order in which she did it. I was able to add more water into the watering can. I must give the client the opportunity to respond to the task. So it could be that, say, my mum got the watering can and it didn't go over the plant, it went to the side. She could respond by moving the can and putting it over there. So allow that response to happen, because that's when the unconscious coordination starts to kick in. Once we've done that, we can start to throw off. So throw off is about how do we make this more challenging? If you find yourself out with someone who's older and you're walking, engage in conversation and see whether this throws off their walking. If they start to stop, you know that they might need a little bit of help to work on their coordination, on their skills, because that's one of the first signs that somebody may be increasing their risk of falling, when they can't multitask walking and talking at the same time. We can do little assessments like sit to stand, where you ask someone to get up from their seat, walk 10 feet and get back. And if they can do that within 10 seconds, then that's all great. Again, that's a little bit of a box standard test, so I would be dubious and look for potentially making assessments that are more relevant to your client. But that was just an interesting one that I read about. The other thing you can do is to start early, taking the fear out of falling. Some of the sports that do that really well are things like judo and martial arts. So within this video, what I'm starting to use is different hurdles. There's a clear idea of what success is. You need to navigate around the hurdles, or you need to catch the bag and then navigate around the cones. But we're starting to make that fun connection with something that will be meaningful to their life. You may have noticed that the lady put her foot on a bag as well. So changing the ground environment, again, can be something that's really, really useful. Here, have a little think about what could this possibly have to do with my client's life? Why might have I chosen all these different things? I should have a little prize or something for the person that guesses what this is. Does anybody have a guess? I'll ask you after.
Gardening.
Gardening. Bingo. There you go. The prize goes straight.
She was also on the floor, wasn't she, moving stuff or
Yeah,
doing the flower beds or something.
that's right. So she was doing her weeding, then she was taking her wheelbarrow and her potatoes. Um, Different types of games. So if we had a bit longer, we could go into these different types of games. But things like, can you use different targets as part of the game? Can you use obstacles, whether that's a bag on the floor, whether that's a bag being thrown to someone, whether that's an obstacle that is when you get to this cone, you need to do X, Y, Z. Or when you get to that cone, you need to sing me a song. Because that type of thing can also start to make play in cognition. So remembering the sequence and the order of things. Quantitative, so you might have a game that is about one of the simple games I played with my group was we had a load of cooking apples. So what they had to do is to get the cooking apples out of the bucket as quickly as possible. So a really simple quantitative game. It could be bean bags into cones, that type of thing. Reaction. So that could be you're going to do the game that you set up, but every time I clap once, you need to run to the front of the net and said, you cannot be serious. And every time I clap twice, you're going to jump up in the air and go, goal. So whatever that is, you can start to get really creative. But the art is making the creativity something that emotionally connects with your client. This is an example of using targets, quantitative because there's a number to them, and it's reactive because I'm calling out which number. Obviously, I stole this from a very popular game, Twister, but it's a fantastic one. Also great if you've got somebody who is climbing but injured and for some reason can't actually climb. So that's a great one for that. It's also that point where someone can feel safe when they're on the ground, which reminds me the whole reason about the videos with getting someone to be good at falling. It's the first thing you learn when you're doing judo. or any form of martial arts is how to roll and how to make sure that you're not just forcing your wrist in front of you, but you bend and roll into your shoulder. And the gentleman that was on the floor doing that, he has polio and MS, and his biggest fear was falling, mainly because he's got a 2-year-old who leaves a lot of Lego lying around. So that's one of the reasons why we created that task.
Reach the ball to purple. Reach it to green. Reach it to red. Left leg orange. Reach to green. Reach to yellow.
So this is Karen's client, Jo, and she can tell you her age later if she thinks that's appropriate. But what Karen is using is the targets. Anytime you put a ball in somebody's hand, it just 9 times out of 10, it creates a little smile. But what I also love about this particular video is that you can be super specific with the way you create the game. So when Jo stepped forward with her right leg, you may have noticed that the knee actually it turned out. So it started to externally rotate. And if you didn't see it, you might have seen it if you looked again at the foot. And then by doing that, you can start to then change the game, because what that means is that Jo's skill in that range meant that she wasn't entirely holding those muscles in that place, which is absolutely fine, but it meant that her foot just kicked out and it came off the glute. So what Karen could then do, which is what she did do, is change the movement and add the rotation from the ball when Jo was already down in that movement to make sure that she was getting hold of that glute. So you can be really, really super specific with your targets. If you want to get more from somebody's glute med, you could take their hand up and reach over while you take the other hand to the blue cone. So you can change these games around and be really specific to tasks. Eight, 7, 8, 2. Good. 5. 5. Lovely. And you can throw the bag at me. Good. Nice and quick. Lovely. You're super safe. That's it. Good. Good. I know it's purple, orange, yellow, green, orange, red, purple, green, blue. Actually walk to me to give me that high five. Nice, and give me a cheer. Unfortunately, Damaris, after the gardening, went out of the house about 9 months ago now and slipped on a leaf. So things happen. Sometimes you get unlucky. And she broke her patella. You can probably guess from that video which one. It was the left patella. And so she wasn't able to straighten that leg for, sorry, she had to keep it straight for a while. And it really did knock her confidence. And so these games aren't just about building bone density. And actually, from everything I've read, the best thing we can do is give our clients the opportunity to move well. And so what I had to do here is to work back on Damaris's confidence getting back out there. And that's why I started off with that one leg and those very small movements to the different points to see how her leg coped and to build her confidence and then get her to move. And the next step is to get her to walk. You could see she was still looking down, to trust that she could walk straight ahead. But these sort of things are fantastic. And if you were worrying, she did actually get a chance to do boxing. I didn't just make her do loads of exercises with her boxing gloves on, even though that is quite entertaining for me. So what I'd like to do now is take any of your questions. I thought it wouldn't be fair if we didn't have Bob on here. This is Karen's client who went viral on TikTok.
Hiya.
High knees, awesome coordination, but also that's just a little bit more stomp. So it's not just for the ladies, it's for the gentlemen out there. Thank you very much for your time.
Let me tell you. My little band. So I'll give a fuck what you do, say Carolina. You put a little too tight. You shooting that shot like 2K Carolina. Tell 'em I'm next. Tell 'em you find a little something. Shine on. Tell 'em I'm next. Tell 'em you find a little something. Shine no.
So I hope you've got a few questions for me now. And what I'm going to do is just come off the share link. It might take me a few moments to uncover the share button. So if you can come and see me online, that'd be great. I just need to go, where is that? Desktop. I think those were 100 of different exercises to use on here. Where stop share. There we go. There we go. I can see you now. Marvelous.
Brilliant. Well done, Jo.
Questions or anything we'd like to add to that? Because obviously there's a lot to go through. And there's a couple of things that I really want you to get from this, and that is how much fun we can have in helping people learn and how fun can reduce those risks and that terror and that fear.
I think that's brilliant, Jo. I mean, I don't know what other people do. I'm an osteopath. I'm Jo's cousin, actually, as it happens. And I have recently, osteopathy doesn't always use rehab. Physiotherapists quite often use rehab instead.
Yeah.
But in the recent years, I've been working with a lot of physios, and I have developed my own sense of rehabilitation program that works a lot on stability and flexibility to help the aging process and to mitigate against falls and to mitigate against aging. And I do it myself and I teach it to my patients. I find it very difficult for them to actually take it on board. I don't know how many of them really go home and really do it, because the stuff that I do really does build you up. But I'm really encouraged by what you guys are doing with the games, because I think when it's fun like that, they're more likely to do it, you know? So I think, yeah, it's great. But it's interesting because everything you're talking about, I myself I've gone down that road, but in a slightly different way, because obviously I'm not a personal trainer, and you know,
Yeah.
so but yeah, really interesting.
And I think that's where all those things cross over. And I am relieved that I don't have to be the one that says whether someone takes HRT, gets the, you know, go out and then
Yeah,
let me catch that. Do you know what I mean? But
yeah,
what's super interesting is the fitness industry have these words like strong, stability,
yeah.
core strength, and all of those sorts of things. And what I found when I'm looking at the research, they're not easily defined. And
Hmm.
and I think that
Yes,
the
yeah,
thing,
that's right.
I think in fact, across rehab, across osteopathy and all of those things, we could all learn from each other in ways
Mm,
of adapting our wording to more positive. Um,
mm, mm.
just because even being told that you're weak can create fear,
Yes,
you know,
yes.
dysfunction can create fear. This
Mm,
of changing muscular balance, you know, those sorts of things.
mm, mm.
Did anybody else? I know, I think KB, did you have any questions on that? KB, I'm calling you KB. Kate or Karen, you can both come in or whatever. I didn't mean that to be the Karen show, by the way. There,
I know I was feeling quite famous at
Are
some
you
point.
are you feeling it was the heat on in Saigon over in that corner? Because I hadn't totally finished all my videos, but they were the ones that so Anna at the other side here, she's my master of demonstrating anything for hours and hours and hours on the strength training. So at least you could sit back, Anna, today.
I found it really interesting that I've never really thought about it before about because I do work with a lot of more mature people and just how the mind and the brain work with movement and what could be stopping them from doing something that I'm asking on a more logical instruction that I think's logical to them, and then just changing that around to maybe getting them to do something like a bit random, which is actually the same exercise. Like, for instance, turning and pretending you're putting a cup of tea to the right hand side of you with your left hand, or I don't know, like something random like that, as opposed to saying, lift and rotate the spine towards the right or left. So that kind of thing, you're still like asking for the same thing, but their interpretation is I'm just going to turn my body around and do that kind of thing. So it's really interesting on how to see an instruction to relay it to somebody who doesn't have the confidence or gets stressed when it comes to like exercise stuff. So yeah, no, it's really interesting.
Thank you for that because you add some really interesting points. And in fact, one of your little points was so interesting that Karen did a talk on it. And that was the actual coaching of it, because there is a whole heap of research, we can go down that rabbit hole, of the more we say spine, the more we say glutes, the more we say knees in line with toes, the less the person is going to take on board and learn. And when we age, that's going to be even more important. And so all of those games are self-discovery. One example was I was working with a woman who had a club foot. And I say this in that way because I don't know any other industry where you go, oh, they've got a club foot. That's great. I've never worked with someone with a club foot before. But I was like, oh, this is exciting. I've got some stuff I can go and research now. Well, when she started, her foot didn't get the same dorsiflexion, and I brought in my spidery ladder, and the game was every time she knocked it over, she had to buy the coffee, and of course, like at the end of it, she's like, oh, this is a nightmare. That's I'm just buying you coffees for weeks. But literally within about 10-15 minutes of the session, she stopped and she had learnt to pick her own foot up and navigate over that. And it was just a fun gameplay that did that, and allowing her to show me what she's capable of. And I think one of the things that I learned wording wise is from a improv teacher, and he told me about how he had someone come to do his session who was blind. And bearing in mind that improv is all about seeing the facial reactions around you. And it's really good, incidentally, for being a personal trainer because it really helps you get deeper into your listening skills and finding out when someone was got, what they emotionally connect with, when they got the ball, someone go, oh, then that's not for them, all of those things. But everything was about sight. And he's like, oh my goodness, how is this session going to work? Because everything in his improv session was about seeing people. And in fact, you start the scene without any of this. His style is you don't do the off you go, you're in a spaceship. You do a mover chair, you sit down and you look at the person's shape and you start knowing the emotion. And where's this going? what he said to this person was, "What do you need from me?" And that is the most powerful, beautiful phrase I think I've ever heard. What do you need from me? Because that stops any patronizing help with an exercise. You know, can you imagine if, oh, you've got osteoporosis, right? Well, I'm just going to hold your hand like that woman and help you up and down the stairs, you fragile person. You know, though our words have such power. And so, you know, with our clients, what do you need from me is a great one because they will tell you, but then build up that positive movement. Sorry, I went off on a tangent there, got quite excited about Dave and his what did you get from me? I think it was when you said as well about spine rotating and things like that, you know, because Pilates and well, I mean, I've done a lot of group exercise and a lot of it was about muscular balance, but we were taught it was muscular balance because of dysfunction, a lead to pain, a lead to injury. We were taught correct posture. Why? Because of a causation of pain or injury. But when we look at the research, that's not what it says. It's just not what it says. There can be some correlation, but then there's also correlation with eating ice creams and dying of a shark attack. It doesn't mean because you eat ice cream you are going to die from a shark bite. They just happen to be correlated because they both happen in hot weather. So we have to be really careful about correlation studies, unless, of course, you want to make loads of money and then bang on the correlation because you can sell stuff. Maybe I'll edit that bit out.
I thought it was quite interesting, Kate, actually, how quickly you kind of picked that up with your example. Because obviously we both do Pilates and we know how kind of the intrinsic cueing, it's really, you know, and you literally, if you wanted someone to turn, you literally said, pick up a coffee cup. And I have to say it was brilliant because I know you've not really heard this stuff. Literally that quick, because that is, you know, even if you said reach across, imagine you're picking up your coffee.
Yeah.
That'd be it. Tell them what hand to do and off you go.
Yeah.
And you can use all those things in Pilates as well. And you can get them standing. So I have to say, that's what the reaction was, because I was like, wow, that's good. It's good. Because unfortunately, many Pilates teachers will think like that. So
Yeah, I was
like thinking outside.
yeah, just thinking of like how you would get someone who's really not in that mindset, like that fitness, go all out, I want results mindset. How do you get them to move? And it's like, yeah, I just think of the most random everyday thing. Because that everyday thing is probably what they're doing anyway, but you know, you're probably going to make it better, or like you say, less chance of less balance when they are turning around or whatever, because they've been turning around in the sessions with you for this many, and they can reach across or put a seatbelt on from an arm here instead of like an arm here or something. If you do something like, I don't know, over this way, as opposed to reach for your seatbelt, you know, and bring that hand weight across or something like that, as if you're putting your seatbelt on. I don't know.
Well, it's like the fear, isn't it? People are, if you start saying move, just, oh no, I can't actually do that because I can't turn my head.
Or what's going to happen?
You can get them to do, but you can't ignore their fear, but you have to find a way of getting past it. So yeah, it's
even something like really simple, like that where you said, Joe, like if you're walking, talk to them, and do they stop? I've had quite a few people that I know that stop, or if I see them on the street now, like, because it's super annoying, because I like to just go and walk, because I'm like stopping every 2 seconds to speak, and I'm like, why are you stopping? Like, but then, you know, I said to my mom, I was like, you do that. What do you say? But yeah, because it's uphill and I have to catch my breath and I don't want to talk. If it's uphill, I went, no, it was on the flat last week. Anyway, so
So you've got your first game now. You're gonna like, oh no, we're keeping talking. Oh, walk and talk, walk and talk. But the thing is as well about these games is they can start off at such a simple layer. Like, when she was walking along, you can have a line on the floor. And the other thing is like you can have a line that you're getting someone to step over, and then that could be a really small hurdle or a small step. But each week you get the step slightly bigger, but you don't tell them. And then finally they come, you've been putting this step up. And I'm like, yeah, but you're already there. You've already learnt the skills to do that and keep going.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's really thank you, Joe, and thanks, Karen, for inviting me. It's just it was a really fun and interesting way of looking at translating some movements to people. Yeah.
I mean, and it is because what really interests me, and I was saying, I think before you arrived, that when I did this, went to this talk, and they were talking about the new way of diagnosing. Everything was about the diagnosis. We've got to get this early. We've got to get this earlier. I mean, it's not my place to say whether we do that, but from reading, it's like, well, that could be good and it could be bad. But the other thing is that was then being led into the vibration plates. And looking at that, it had a no benefit towards bone density. There were some really small studies done on balance. So there was
I missed the first bit. Was the about the vibration plate thing? Sorry, I came in a
yeah,
little later. So were you saying about there's no evidence based on the vibration plates? Is that what you're saying?
yeah. So what the evidence says is because a lot of this is all muddy. We know that exercise, movement, diet, and don't smoke is still the very best thing. But when you come to different specific exercise modalities, some have slightly more research. Some of it isn't as much as we would like to think. But what we do know is coordination is going to use muscles. And if you've got a better muscle around your skeletal system, that's going to be helpful. And that's why balance is so important. But the risks are more about falling, not about the actual osteoporosis. And the big thing is that when someone's selling something to uh, scan you and diagnose you, and then are also heavily invested in the very next thing that they offer you, which is vibration plate, and it comes under different names depending which brand it's
Yeah.
under. And they've got the weight machines as well, which are good, but they're static. So my problem with that is weight training is good, but if you want to get buff for a holiday next week, you go on a machine because you can load it up more, and that will be good for getting that result, as in muscle. Okay. But it won't improve your motor skill development.
I just want to ask you, Joe, just out of curiosity more than anything, do you find that on the results, is it more because I feel with a lot of my clients, they are hypermobile, and the hypermobility causes a deformation in the feet, which then creates an imbalance because like they're either like their toes are either like gone off one or bunions or like you say, with that club foot or whatever. And I was just wondering if it's more related to hypermobile clients, as opposed to just a random study. Would those, if you went deeper into the study, would they show up for hypermobility?
So there's quite a lot to unpack there. So let me just try and pick. With hypermobility, is the question about the skill or the best movements for um
Balance for
got you. Okay, yeah, balance. Perfect. So two things that you said earlier, and I wanted to pick up on because it was brilliant. In motor skill, in all our faster courses, what we do is we work from something called dynamic systems. And it's a theory, and it's a way of describing what we see when we see movement. And that's what we're really good at, is seeing, predicting movement. And the idea is to get someone always better at what it is they want. But the thing that is unique and different to dynamic systems, to I think any other body that I know talking about movement, is it requires understanding that the brain works with the body in the environment that it's in due to the task that it has. And you cannot separate those four things. And so in the fitness industry, we like to try and oversimplify it and say biomechanics of the foot, biomechanics of the hip, that but the biomechanics will influence the brain. The brain will influence the biomechanics, and all of that will be influenced by the environment and the task. So when we talk about the foot, we've got to go back to what's the desired outcome of the person with the foot. Because if they want to get that cup of tea, their desired compelling reason to move is to get the tea. And they will get that tea as best they can without hitting their head on the kettle, because that's not what we want. And so their whole body will react and learn to that. And so when it comes to balance, all we really want to do is to give enough tasks, enough games that allow people more opportunities, that they go, I know this. This is the route that I can now go and get the kettle without headbutting it. And so I don't think there's an imbalance, and I don't think that, like with hypermobility, what you tend to get is they're really good in an end range of skill, so can often go too far, dislocate a knee, dislocate a shoulder. So then the games that I'm looking at, so if you remember when Karen was lunging out of the hub, if she'd been hypermobile, what I would be using is the little lines, the little dots, saying, can you get there and back, so that she's actually getting skillful to be in that short range and back.
Yeah.
And then the bag that I was using, so ground reaction, I might get someone to tap on the front, tap on the side, tap on here, tap on there, to get used to that different environment. And then the whole lot works together. And the beautiful thing to that, again, it becomes a more positive way of problem solving.
Yeah. 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 Great.
Sorry if that was long-winded. And it's quite a lot, because we normally sort of take 12 weeks to kind of go through all of that.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting as well. Yeah, yeah. Oh, it makes sense. Yeah.
And it's kind of exciting, because then you kind of go, well, that's like why and how, all of the things. And when you said about the arm as well, so say you've got to get the kettle, and someone's saying, well, I can't do that, so I can't get flexion, abduction, external rotation of this, would looks like my left arm, but it's really my right. So I go, well, okay, don't worry, use your other hand and go like that, because now what I'm doing is, the game is, can you touch the bag here, can you touch my hand there, can you touch this? But all the time, this hand is still getting flexion, abduction, external rotation. So I'm still getting the very movement that they want. And then I get to be able to show them a video afterwards and say, do you see this? It's exactly the same move as that. Or now do that movement again. And they're like, oh, actually, well, that's weird. Wow, that feels so much better. Whoa, magic. Yeah, yeah, yeah. There we go.
Yeah.
I'm aware that everybody, I'm going to turn the recording off, so I